Thank you, Robin, and greetings, everybody. Thank you for taking time this evening. Let me take my hat off to Ambassador Shukria Baraksai for your wonderful remarks. I saw you as kind of an exemplary participant in our conferences, always looking for the best that you could find. So thank you for your wonderful participation. And thank you, Jacques, for what you had to say earlier. I don't think I have a lot to add, but I did prepare a PowerPoint which I will go through, and I hope it can be helpful. So I'm going to try and just show you some images of parts of the conference that may not have been covered. Before I go into it, some of you may remember 5 years ago, World Summit 2020, where we had 7,000 people in Seoul, and we had multiple events all happening at the same time on a vast scale. I think that was the most exhausting summit in my life. This one was much smaller. We may have been talking about 500 people in the room at a time, most of the time, but it seemed to be almost as exhausting. And I think it's because it was very complex. We had many different concurrent events. So one of the sessions, all morning one day, was on the climate and environment. And here you see former President Macky Sall speaking. And this was a very high-level academic content. And I hope we get proper published report from it in due course. I've taken a screenshot of our latest version of Connections, which you probably know by now, and there's quite an overlap from the summit and this, so I recommend that you get hold of it and read it, either the published version or online. Here's one of the speakers from that session, as illustrated in the publication Connections. And here you can see a picture of all the speakers there. And moving on to the women's session, which Shukria Baraksai spoke about. Here we go. Women charting a peaceful future through cooperation, reconciliation, and healing. And I wasn't there, but I wanted to show a couple of images of it. There were actually, I'm going to go back a second, there were 3 parts to this session. First of all, it was a gathering of the International Association of First Ladies for Peace, which forms part of the Universal Peace Federation. Then the second session celebrated the 33rd anniversary of the Women's Federation for World Peace International. And then finally, there was a Bridge of Peace ceremony, which many of you may know if you've been to Women's Federation events. Very heartwarming to see the coming together of different cultures and people in a personal moment that reflects the peace building that we are all about. And here you are, you can see happy gathering towards the end of their sessions. These are just some pictures of some of the participants in the conference. This is actually taken from before because it gives the identity of each of them. Dan Burton, you know. I wanted you to see Senator Mushahid Hussain, who's co-chairman of the International Conference of Asian Political Parties. I will refer to something that he said later on. And also beside him, the Executive Secretary of Sensad, which I will also refer to later on, and the chairman of FOPREL. In the first plenary, those who were either current or mostly former heads of state were able to speak. We had to cram in a lot of speakers, so it was anyway quite intense in terms of the level of content in that session. Towards the end of it, there was a signing of a memorandum of understanding with the Sensad, which I've outlined as the Community of Saharan States. We already had signed one previously a number of years ago, and this was at their request a renewal of this that we could take further our cooperation. We especially worked with the education of youth in some of those countries and peace education. So this is I wanted to point out that this is the continuation of partnership with governmental organizations, which I think is a future development that's quite important. Another intergovernmental organization is FOPREL, the Forum of Presidents of Legislative Powers for Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico. And they had their own sessions in part of the World Summit. So their previous one, this is the 31st reunion. Well, the 30th one was held in the Parliament of Morocco. So they are doing them internationally, and on this occasion they chose to do it with our agreement. We were very happy to host them at World Summit 2025. And here you can see the title at the back there of the room is Contemporary Challenges to the World Peace Order. In other words, it's the same title as the UPF conference in Spanish. Then we provided for them a very special briefing on Korean IT and AI, which was offered by Korean experts to assist these Latin American leaders. The religious leaders, again, you've seen these in photos already, but I wanted to just highlight them. Pastor Paula White, Bishop Yunan, Imboni Radebe, and Archbishop Ndanga from Zimbabwe. They had an interfaith session. The interfaith session, earlier, Ambassador Shukria Baraksai said you had a choice. Well, if you chose the religious interfaith prayer, you also needed a bus or a car because it was up in the mountains. So some of the sessions were in quite different places. It was quite difficult to be at all of them, especially because at the same time as this was going on, there were other sessions in the Korean Parliament. On the evening of the first full day, the second plenary session focused on the Asia-Pacific Union Forum. This is a previous meeting which happened in July of last year, where UPF was discussing it at the Malaysian Parliament. But here, during the session that we held at the evening, you see Dr. Shanshik Yang, who's, as chair of UPF, developed it considerably, and Ahmed Al-Jarwan, who's the president of the Global Council for Tolerance and Peace and the former president of the Arab Parliament, speaking in that session. Beside Ahmed Al-Jarwan, you see Senator Hussein, and here he is on the right in this picture. You know, there were different focus of this, but part of it is to see how Asian nations can work together to assist in a process that would result in peace on the Korean Peninsula. And here, Mr. Swanstrom, or Dr. Swanstrom, speaking on the left from Sweden, gave some great insight in what he had to say, and this included a suggestion that it might be good to have a next time. Let me just read from my notes, because I wrote down what he said at the time. He said, why don't you make the next World Summit on football? North Korea would definitely respond to that. And he said, you could do it in Mongolia. Anyway, he was talking about incremental steps and consistent efforts. And he said, the principle we need to think of is, talk to me the most when I deserve it the least. And he was talking about North Korea at that time. And then Senator Hussein from Pakistan, he had some very interesting experience to share with us. 40 years ago, he was in North Korea and met Kim Il-sung, and he feels that in that country there's a historic yearning for peace and unity. And he said, like Mr. Swanstrom said, we need sustained diplomacy through all channels. So both of these speakers had quite a lot of optimism looking forward towards finding peace in the Korean Peninsula. And here's a picture at the end of that Asia-Pacific Union Forum session in the evening. Before I comment on this picture, I'm going to step back a second to our opening dinner. and give you the comments from a rabbi who was speaking at the welcoming dinner. An American rabbi said, he said, if you don't believe in God, at least believe in something bigger than you. And he said he was born 6 days after the armistice, and he spoke in a very optimistic tone about these conflicts are going to be over. And wherever there is conflict, there is missing knowledge. And anything I hate is because of something I can't face inside myself. So it was nice to hear a religious leader speaking of peace in these tones. This is the result. The final event was to meet in the Chonil Sanctum, and then in the same building, part of the Chonwongung larger building that you saw pictures of earlier, there is this room which can be a place to gather leaders of the world to discuss and formulate plans for peace. So that's what we're looking towards. And just one more comment from earlier on, and that is this. You may have seen in the video at the beginning, there was a singer, and this was the husband of Pastor Paula White. And he was singing the song that was playing in the background during that video, Imagine Peace. The song was written after witnessing UPF conferences. It was written as a tribute to the work of UPF. So I felt it was nice that he could come and sing it at one of our conferences. So I'll finish there. Thank you very much, and I hope this was helpful.